from the MCPLive.tv studios, located in downtown Conroe. It's the Conroe Art League, live. Welcome to another episode of the Conroe Art League Live, or Cal Live as we like to call it here on MCPLive.tv. I'm Bill Brenza, and I am going to be your host and interviewer today, and we are joined by Carol Berger. Carol?
Glad to see you.
Nice to meet you. So let's start off with, how did you get involved in art? Did you start out early in life? Is it something you just started? Tell me about it.
Actually, it's in my genes.
It's in your genes?
It's in my genes. My great-grandfather was an engraver for the American Banknote Company in Philadelphia.
Really?
And then my mom's mom was a hobby artist, so she used her arts in drawing, painting, and needlework. And then my dad's parents were both professional artists, so they ran the Tucson School of Arts, and both were oil painters, watercolorists. My grandmother even did some wood carvings and things like that, and some clay work, actually.
So you've been doing this for a long time.
I have. I started early. In grade school, I got a little award and was in the local paper for a drawing I'd done for my art teacher. And I did art actually all through high school and college. It was I was a double major, so art and Spanish.
So where did you go to art school?
I didn't actually go to an art school per se, except for the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts in Philadelphia. I did a summer program there.
The question I meant to ask was, what college did you go to where you studied art?
Okay, that was the College of Worcester in Ohio.
Okay.
And it was a double major. And I was blessed that it was a small liberal arts school. They had a program that was a junior year abroad. So I spent my junior year at the University of Madrid studying art history and Goya in particular. And at the same time, I got to visit art museums in France and Italy. So a wonderful experience.
So the major in Spanish helped?
It did. I wrote my thesis on Goya in Spanish.
Wow.
So that was pretty awesome.
Do you did you like Goya, or did you like Goya then and move on?
I just thought he was really interesting, and I wanted to explore the lights and darks that he used. And there are so many examples of his work at the Prado that it was a good choice for me. Later on, I came to really appreciate Velázquez and some of the other Spanish painters as well.
Luckily, I've actually been to the Prado and gotten to see it. It's one of the more interesting art museums in Europe, as far as I'm concerned.
Right. Well, I actually like the Uffizi also.
I don't know where that is. It was
in Florence. And one of the things I loved about the Uffizi is that they gave space between the paintings. Like a lot of museums pack those paintings in there so that you get to see a lot. But at the Uffizi, at least when I was there, they were more spread out so you could stand back and really appreciate them.
So you weren't raised in Texas?
No, I was born in Rochester, New York. My parents married while my dad was still in the Navy. And he was a freelance aerial photographer, so also an artist in a way. And
did he work for Kodak at all? I mean, Kodak was Rochester was the home of Kodak, right?
Actually, he worked for Lockheed and places like that. He rode around in the nose of an airplane and took surveying photographs before the advent of drones and all of that kind of stuff.
So that was how he paid the bills.
It definitely was.
But then he did it as an art form also?
He did. He took pictures of pueblos, adobes, trains, and also he did school photographs on the side.
At one point in my checkered career, I did 27 soccer teams, and I when I got done with that, I'm like, I never want to do this again.
For sure.
So how did you end up in Houston?
Grandkids.
Grandkids.
Long and short grandkids. We spent most of our married life raising our family in California, and I taught public school and used my Spanish with my bilingual students
Oh, that must have been
Taught
very
in
helpful.
English, general ed, but if they didn't understand or I had a parent conference, I did the Spanish. And then I did oil paints and watercolor on the side.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, did you go to school at all, take any art courses and stuff while you were in California?
Yes, they were mostly adult ed type of classes. And then the grandkids were here, and, seeing them twice a year isn't enough. So when we retired from education, we moved to Texas. My husband likes to say, I wasn't born here, but I got here as soon as we could.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, I'm a transplant myself from Florida, so
Okay.
and I also am very lucky. Two of my grandchildren live here in Conroe, and two of them, they lost their minds for a while and were in Colorado, but luckily they're back now. So I have all four of them within driving
That's
distance.
awesome. Unfortunately, our second son married late, and they have a 2.5-year-old in LA. So now we're doing the couple of year visits the other direction.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, we don't get votes on that.
No, I know.
So how long have you been with the Conroe Art League?
Gosh, I joined shortly after I got here, and they were still at Christ Church.
Oh, okay.
So however long that is.
Now, you talked about doing painting and stuff, but you're obviously not a painter anymore.
No, I'm not. When I got here, I wasn't really done with teaching, and so I subbed for Montgomery Elementary School out where I live, and I still wanted to take my art, so I took a night class at a Lone Star Montgomery. They offered ceramics and drawing at night, and I thought, well, I've never really done ceramics, I'll give it a shot, and fell in love with it.
So we're going to talk about some of your artwork. Do you want to start with the pictures, or do you want to start with the physical art?
I'm going to go ahead and start with the pictures.
Okay, well, let's put picture number 1 up.
So this is a piece that's Naked Raku. I am still so new to ceramics that I'm really fascinated with process, but my art kicks in with the details. And so this piece is thrown in porcelain on the wheel. It's hand carved and sanded, and then the Naked Raku process is after it's been bisque fired, you cover it with a layer of liquid clay that's called slip, and it won't stick because it's already been fired, it cracks. The circles on it are where I did not apply any of the slip. And then it goes into a raku kiln, which is a low fire process, takes it up to temperature very quickly, and then you remove it and put it in a reduction chamber, which has all kinds of combustibles in it. And of course, when you use tongs and put this red hot piece in the combustibles, they flame up. You top it so it traps the smoke, and the smoke goes everywhere that there's no clay slip on it. And it creates the irregular crackle design that's on it. When it's done, it gets quenched in water, and then the pieces that are still stuck on are scraped off. It's waxed, and there you have it.
So the 50% of the process in the artwork is the glazing and the finishing of the outside,
is.
and not making the actual piece that you're putting the glazing on.
Correct. You can make a beautiful piece and say, oh, I love this. And then when it's glazed, go, oh, I hate this. So, yeah.
Now, do you use water-based or oil-based clay when you start?
So the oil-based clay is the kind that's used when you're sculpting.
Okay.
And the water-based clay, what you dig from the earth or buy from the local ceramics store, is water-based.
In these huge gray bags. Well,
Yes,
clear
it
bags
is.
with the gray clay
Yes,
inside
it
of them.
is. I tried using the caliche that was in my backyard here in Conroe, and I can't get it to vitrify.
Yeah.
So,
Now,
yeah.
define vitrify?
Vitrify is where you can fire it hot enough that those little clay particles kind of melt together.
Okay.
And it won't let water go through it, so it kind of turns to glass. Vitreous is glass-like.
I had one semester of ceramics and didn't really get a chance to get into all the glazes and stuff because I think we only did 2 pieces in the whole semester.
Right.
But the glazing part of it is really tricky. I mean, I know a lot of people that spend 90% of their time working on the glaze issue.
Exactly. The glaze is a combination of chemistry and kitchen recipes. So you have a base for your glaze, and then what you add to it changes the colors in it. What you add to it changes how much it'll run or how stable it is. So definitely.
And you're doing the process 2 or 3 times.
I
least
use
on that
a combination of purchase glazes and my own glazes and studio glazes.
Well, and then you're doing things after the glazes.
Correct. Yeah. Even that piece doesn't actually have a glaze on it. You can do raku where you apply a glaze to it, but in my experience, the colors that you apply to a raku piece, you have to treat it like a watercolor, and it can tend to be fugitive. And so I've tried putting clear acrylic over the ones that have color to them to try and keep that from oxidizing and changing color.
But one of the most fun parts of being an artist is, I wonder what will happen if I do this, right? And sometimes it works and then sometimes it doesn't. And if it does, then that's your little secret, and everybody,
Right.
of course, always wants to know, how did you do that?
The interesting thing about the clay community is that they're very sharing. And they understand that I can tell this person what I'm doing, but they'll never be able to replicate it in my style.
That's right.
And I've gotten a lot of help from other clay artists, from people I've taken classes from, workshops from just other artists that I see at trade shows. And people ask me, and I'm happy to tell them. Yeah.
So let's look at the second item.
So that is a piece, a lot of my focus in my art has to do with nature. I'm really concerned about climate change, about the planet, about the future it holds for our children, and doing simple things like reuse, recycling, choosing products that use minimal plastics, working to reduce the amount of meat I eat and space it out with some fish and chicken and not have as much red meat. All those kinds of things help our planet. And so a lot of my art is inspired by nature, and with the hope that people will say, and feel that and maybe translate that into also wanting to be proactive in working for
So what are you representing with that piece?
So that piece that was just up is a contemporary view of a seed or a bulb. The supports are like the roots, and the piece that comes up out of it are the sprouting leaves.
See, I saw underwater grass
Okay.
in it, so I was
That's
close.
important to climate too.
I was close.
Yeah.
Now, how big is that piece?
That piece is about, I would say, 14 to 16 inches tall and maybe about 3 to 4 inches wide, and it has a marble base on it. If you just left it by itself, it would, because of it's so vertical, it would tend to be a little bit unstable. And so I ordered this polished marble, and I decided to do a contrasting black. And then you have to scuff it up underneath where the feet are.
So it'll
use,
stick.
Yeah. And what I found is that two-part epoxies tend not to be as reliable as I want for ceramics.
Oh, really?
Because they don't adapt well for temperature change and things like that.
Oh, okay.
There's movement between like the marble and the ceramic and the glue, and over time it may be 10 years, it may be 5 years where it can release. And so I've started using a product called Flex Grip. It comes in clear, and it always remains a little bit flexible.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have to put supports in the
Piece when I was
piece?
firing, yeah.
Yeah.
It was fired on its side.
Oh, okay.
And then when you do supports, you make the supports at the same time you make the piece, because as clay dries, it shrinks and moves. And so by making the support at the same time I make the piece, they both shrink in unison. And then it's fired, each of the firings in unison.
So I think I was asking a different question. Did you have metal
No,
support? It's just all
it's all
clay.
porcelain.
Oh, okay. Porcelain. Okay.
And it's unglazed. I
Oh,
do
really?
a lot of sanding on it to both at the bisque stage, well, at the greenware stage, which is before any firing. At the bisque stage, where it's been fired once but not to vitrification, so it's still kind of a soft fire, and it allows it to be, you can manipulate it more. And the bisque stage is really good for applying glazes, because it absorbs the glaze into the piece. And
So
then
it's not a gloss.
it is not a gloss finish,
Yeah.
but it's a satin finish, because
Okay.
after it's been bisqued, then I sand it some more.
Oh, okay.
And after it's been vitrified, I sand it again. So there's a lot of steps,
Really interesting.
basically.
So item number 3.
So this piece is about 40 inches across. It's inspired from a trip that my husband and I took to South Africa for a wedding anniversary. And the center part of it is ceramic. It's about 12 inches across, and it has a lot of little holes around the edge. And then I harvested curly willow. For a while, I had that tree in my backyard. You dry the curly willow, and then you re-wet it to make it pliable so you can do the weaving.
Oh, okay. So it goes into the holes.
And comes out again.
Oh, it comes. So it's
So
all the way through.
I take a long piece and I feed it through, and then because I've re-wet the curly willow, I can bend it back out. And I use clothespins all the way around to hold it. And then I take the curly willow, a separate piece, and start weaving around. And then I add more curly willow as I go around.
Now, when you're going around, it's all held in place just by the weave?
Yes, once it dries out again, the curly willow becomes firm again, and it's held in place by that.
Wow. How long did it take you to do that piece?
Making the clay piece itself, is probably an hour. It has a foot on the back that's pretty deep, so I can put a wire around it so it can be hung on a wall. I love the effect of the shadow on the wall behind the piece, so I wanted it to stick out a little bit. The ceramic part is a little bit concave, and making that piece was probably an hour. The glazing, takes another hour with firings in between. And then the weaving is what takes the longest part.
That would look really neat on a wall with a spotlight on it.
It does. It does. I'm in the Archway Gallery in Houston, in Montrose.
I'm familiar with it.
Yes. And so when I did my solo show, the wall had it's a part of 3, and the wall had them across with the light on. It was gorgeous.
So you had a solo show at Archway?
I did.
Oh, you're an artist of some renown then.
No, well, getting there.
Yeah.
I think it's one of those things when you start out as an artist and you're working away, and then somebody says, "Oh, do you sell your work?" And you go, "Oh, I guess I better start pricing my stuff." And then somebody will say, "Oh, well, do you teach classes?" I said, "Well, I have room for small classes in my studio. I guess I can do that." And then I was approached by Archway. They'd seen some of my work. Brett Hall actually mentioned me to a member there that asked him, did they know any 3D artists that might be interested? And I applied and was accepted, and very blessed to be there. I love the other artists, and I've learned so much professionally in terms of showing your pieces, labeling your pieces, doing a CV, which I never knew about before, marketing, just a wonderful growth opportunity.
It's always interesting the first time they say, well, how much are you going to ask for this piece? Then you're like, yikes, I have no idea.
I know. The gallery owner of gallery in, I think it's Brenham, did a workshop, and I think it was at the Woodlands Art League. And the workshop was pricing your art. And she said, if you do your time and materials, and that's it, you're losing money. And if you do your time and materials and times it by 2, you're breaking even. And so really you need to do whatever you value your time at and your materials times 3 to begin to start making money. And then I have a little factor I add. If I look at the piece and go, I'm not very happy with it, that's the price it gets. But if I love that piece and I'm not so willing to part with it, then I up it a little because it's hard for me to get rid of it. And so if somebody wants to pay that, then okay.
There's always the interesting thing too of if you price it low, people look at it and go, well, this artist must not be very good, blah, blah, blah. But if you take it and put 10 times that price on it, all of a sudden they look at it and they go, wow, this person must, So I always found that pricing art was a much more of an art than
and it's still difficult for me. I understand that some people can throw 30 mugs in an hour or something, but that's just not me. I'm not a production potter. The clay, I get in a zone kind of, and the clay, it's like, well, some of the clay pieces will go out and in, some will come straight up, and I'm sort of an eclectic collector anyway. I like very smooth lines and clean lines, like the piece Germination 3 that was in this interview. And then I also like things with a lot of detail, like this cup.
What a perfect segue, right?
I know, where I have carved in and then applied different layers of glazes and paid attention to the handle and the foot. And I can always tell when I do a pop-up show if a person knows clay, because they'll turn the piece upside down and look at the foot. And that's one of the things I actually got out of one of the workshops that the Conroe Art League had at one of their member meetings, was that they were talking about two-dimensional art and how you have to have something to catch an eye, but then details that draw you deeper and deeper and deeper into the piece. And I took that home and started looking at that on my clay and what can I do to draw people in. So like on this piece here, you have the color and the form, obviously, but then the design works its way down and around, so it makes you want to look all around at that piece. And clay is definitely a thing that you have to touch. When people come to my booth, when people come to my booth, I always say, oh, please pick it up. Clay's meant to be held and used.
Now, what's this designed to be used for functionally?
This is actually a crossover piece because it can be decorative only, which a lot the pieces that I showed today were. But you can also use it to put flowers in it or to float a candle in it or something like that. And it's interesting because I belong to Clay Houston, and I went to a workshop that they had at the Fogler Gallery, and Judy there was demonstrating throwing a piece upside down. So when this is on the wheel, you throw it, the piece upside down, you push a hole in the middle, and then you throw up on the outside. And her piece didn't have this piece in the middle. It was just the top and the outside. So it's a way to throw the form on the wheel and not have to add the top separately.
How much of your artwork is wheel work and how much is not?
Probably half and half.
Half and half.
Yeah. So I have the functional line, which is primarily wheel, and I have the decorative line, which is primarily hand-built. But this piece, then I thought, why can't I throw that double? So I went down to the center of that, but then I pulled clay up to close it in, pressed it out, and then pulled more clay up. to do
I'm
the
smiling
outside.
like I know what she's talking about.
I'm probably giving you way too much information. Probably going, he's turning glassy-eyed there.
Well, I mean, I've seen people use wheels, and that's about it. So, but I'm sure to the ceramicists that are watching this interview, they'll know exactly what you're talking about.
When I have students, the first thing they want to do is jump on the wheel. And in every class I've ever been in, and I do that with my students too, is I say the wheel is wonderful, but it's like learning a musical instrument. Practice, practice, and more practice. And so I say, I want you to have a couple of pieces to take home, and then we'll jump on the wheel. The other thing about hand building is that it gives you a feel for the clay. Every clay body is different. Every clay body has different plasticity, dries out faster or slower, holds together better or slumps. And so we do some pinch pots and coils on slab pieces so they get a feel and have some actual pieces to take home. The wheel is also a two-part lesson because you make the piece and then you have to come back after it's dried a little to trim the foot of the piece or this part. You can't just throw it and then take it off and tip it upside down and trim the
Just all
bottom.
goes to pieces.
It won't hold its shape.
So you teach your classes at your studio?
My studio in Montgomery. You know, I did a workshop for Cal in their upstairs room early on when people asked me to do classes. And I was transporting and broke a piece in transport. And I said, I can't do that. You know, it's hard enough for people to make a piece in clay and they put their little heart into it and everything. And then for the teacher to break it just didn't work.
Well, and you can't be carrying wheels around and that kind of stuff.
No,
And
I
it's
just
not-
did
it's
hand
not-
building.
It is a messy art, too.
It is. I'd say it's a grown-up reason to play in mud. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for coming. I really appreciate it. It was very interesting.
I'd like to just mention that people can see my art on the artist page at the Conroe Art League. I also have pieces in the gallery. I'm in Archway Gallery in Montrose, in Houston, and I also do pop-ups. I'll be at Market Street art show and sale this fall, and I'm so blessed. I was invited to participate at Bayou City Art Festival
Oh,
in
wow.
Houston.
That's a
so
huge-
I'm so excited.
Yeah, a lot of work, but
It is
a lot of
but
opportunity.
Yes, it is for sure.
Well, thank you very much for coming.
Well, thank you.